Protecting intellectual property is a serious matter. Did you know that in 2008 there was a famous intellectual property case between Mattel, who are the creators of the Barbie doll, and MGA Entertainment, who created a doll called the Bratz. MGA claimed that Mattel had copied their latest range of Bratz dolls. The designs were just too similar. But it turns out that MGA actually stole those designs from Mattel because they had a ex-Mattel employee who started on the designs while he was working for Mattel. The lawsuit turns out in favor of Mattel, in which MGA has to pay damages in the tune of $100 million. And so the moral of the story is protect your intellectual property. My guest today is Devin Miller, and he stopped by the episode to school us about intellectual property and why it's important to protect it. Devin Miller is a patent attorney. He is the founder of Miller IP, which provides services to startups and small businesses and educates them about patents, trademarks, and copyrights. He also has a podcast in which he talks with business owners regarding their business journey. This is sure to be a great episode, so let's get into it. Welcome to the 24-Hour Boss Podcast. This is the show where we talk about business, online marketing, and side hustles. You ready to dive into it? Let's talk about it. Welcome, Devin Miller of Miller IP Law, to the 24-Hour Boss Podcast. Mr. Devin, welcome to the 24-Hour Boss Podcast.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, sir. I'm excited to have you too, just to pick your brains and let's find out more about this intellectual property. Okay, so I know one of the first questions that I'll probably get, or if I put this question out there, I'm sure somebody's going to want to know, what is intellectual property? You know, somebody doesn't know, or they just might want to know, hey, what is intellectual property? So could you help educate us on what is intellectual property?
Yeah, absolutely. So intellectual property is kind of an umbrella term. In other words, it has kind of multiple things underneath it. And so intellectual property includes patents, trademarks, copyright. So a lot of times when people refer to intellectual property, they can be referring to one or all of the above. Really what it's geared towards is it gives you the ability to protect an idea, protect the brand, or otherwise protect the business, as well as build assets and equity and value into that business. Or to kind of maybe break it down just one more step, because now, okay, great, I define intellectual property as patents, trademarks, copyrights. The next question is what's a patent, what's a trademark, and what's a copyright? So breaking that down just a bit simply. So a patent, if you were to think of it, really goes towards protecting and capturing value of an invention. So anything that has a functionality, a utility to it. So if you think of software, hardware, electronics, something of that nature, it's going to be covered with a patent application or with a patent. A trademark is going to go more towards a brand. And so if you're to think of, if you have a name of a company, a name of a product, a catchphrase, a logo, anything that's kind of to do with branding, and you're saying, hey, I want to protect our brand, we want to grow it, we want to capture that value, that's going to fall under trademarks. The last one is going to be on copyrights, and copyrights are going to be more for kind of something that's creative in nature. So if you think of a book, a television show, a movie, a sculpture, a painting, anything along that nature, that's going to be protected via copyright. So when you're looking at intellectual property, they all kind of have the same overall goal of, hey, we've created something that is of value. It's not necessarily tangible or physical, but it still has a lot of value. A lot of time, blood, sweat, and tears go into that. And so you're saying, how do I protect that? How do I protect the invention when I spent 2 years developing it and I want to make sure nobody knocks it off? Or how do I protect a brand when I'm putting all this time in marketing to build a brand that somebody doesn't come along and just copy the name of the company? Or if I write the next best Tom Clancy book or Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, whichever is your genre, how do I protect it so somebody just doesn't start printing that book and start to get all my following? So that's really the intent of intellectual property, and then you have the different avenues in order to protect it.
Wow, that is quite a bit, and quite a bit of protecting needed out there. And I'm thinking with those three, a business or maybe even an entrepreneur, they might need all three of those.
Yeah, it really depends on your business. So, give you an example. Some businesses, let's say you were in a restaurant business, started your own restaurant, you probably don't have any inventions. Maybe you do, but most restaurants, you don't have a lot of inventions. It's really on the food and the brand. So, whereas the brand is really important because that's where you identify all the value, the name of the restaurant they're going to go eat at, they may only need a trademark. On the other hand, let's say you're Apple. You have smartphones where you're going to have patents to protect all of your inventions, all the different ways you do smartphones and computers, and all the work and effort that goes into that research and development. But equally as important, you're going to have branding. Apple brand is a big brand and has a lot of value to it, and so you may have patents and you may have trademarks, or you may be in a movie industry, and so now you're going to say, hey, we're going to shoot the next best movie. We want to make sure the brand's protected for the movie series, and we also want to have the copyright so nobody goes and copies our movie. So every business is a bit different. It depends on where your value is, but all of there is the potential you'll have one or more of those different verticals that you'll want to protect.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I've talked with a attorney before, and I'll ask you this question too. So, when should a person, say a person's going to the business, when should they consider maybe hiring you, like an intellectual property attorney? Should they wait? They got this business started, or I'm guessing, or I think the right answer would be before they even get or jump into the arena, maybe look at hiring you to, give the spiel on what they need, or maybe you could, find out more. But I'm thinking they shouldn't wait. They should probably get in contact with someone like yourself before they even get started.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think that the general guidance is earlier the better. In other words, you may go to an attorney and say, this is what we have going on. And they say, that's great. You're probably a bit early on and you need to hold off. And here's what you need to think about it. But you're always, as a general rule, you're always better to know the milestones, know what you need to protect, and know the process earlier on as opposed to waiting too long. If you're to all the way to, hey, I had a great idea yesterday. I've done zero research. I have, don't have any idea if it's actually a marketplace for it, and I just want to go talk to them. You're probably a bit early if you just barely had the idea and haven't done any work, to develop it or otherwise think it through. But if on the other hand, you have the idea, you've done some research, you're looking to say, okay, I'm serious about it. There's a business opportunity here. I'm going to go out and start to build it or invest my own money or go out and get investors. And you're getting to that point, that's when I'd probably go out and talk to an attorney. Now, the other thing is that, a lot of times the question is, there's sometimes a bit of a difference. You may go talk to an attorney and say, hey, that's great. You've started to get things working out, but it's still too bit early on. You don't have the brand really developed or defined yet, or maybe you don't really know exactly how the invention works other than at a very high level. And so they may say, come back in 6 months or a year when you've done the X, Y, and Z, and that will be the point that, we could help you out. But it's always easier on the front end of that process. One of the other things to think about is, a lot of times people go to the opposite end of waiting too long, or the question is often, how long can I wait? How long can I hold out? Or what's the drop dead deadline? And, there's a couple guidelines that you can think of. One on the patent front, there's a couple things, and it's really kind of the same principle throughout, is the first person to file on an invention is the presumptive owner. So on a patent or even really a trademark or copyright, whoever files on it first is going to be the presumptive owner. So, in other words, what happens if you go out, you have a great invention, you spend 3 years of development, you put it out in the marketplace, you're selling it for a few months, it's going well, and somebody else comes along and files on a patent and says, hey, that's a great idea, and they file on a patent application first. They've created a big issue for you because they're the presumptive owners, they're the presumptive inventors, and it severely handicaps or limits, if not completely removes your ability to protect your own invention. So that's kind of one thing to always keep in mind. And that's the same thing with branding. Somebody else files on the trademark first, they're going to be the presumptive owner of the brand, and you have very limited recourse if they file on it first. The one other thing, and I'll take a pause, is specific to patents. One thing that people oftentimes don't know is that once you have an invention, you put it out in the public. So let's say you created the world's best iPhone. It was going to be awesome. It's going to be better than anything else out there. And you go put it out in the public and you say, okay, I'm going to go sell it for a couple of years, get some money, and then I'm going to come to a patent attorney. The problem is you just created an issue for yourself, because anytime you put an invention out to the public, so put it out on a website, you offer it for sale, you go to trade shows, anything of that nature. You have 1 year from the time you put it out in the public within which you can get a patent on, or you can file for a patent. So if you wait 2 or 3 years, put it out in the public, sell for a few years, and then say, hey, when I get a little bit of money, I'm going to go talk to an attorney. You waited 2 or 3 years, you've now dismissed a window and you're not able to protect it. And now you're allowed anybody to go and create the same invention and become a competitor. So there are certain deadlines that you're going to want to think about.
So the earlier, it sounds like the earlier the better. And from what you're saying, the person needs to actually file that patent. Regardless, you can come up with the invention first, but what you're saying is it goes by who files it first, right?
Yep. Yeah. So it's you could be the first inventor if you had it in your idea, maybe you had it in your mind, or you had it written down. You're just getting started, and somebody else comes along after you but files on it first. It's a first to file system where whoever files on it is a presumptive inventor, and unless you can definitively prove that they stole the idea from you and they did something underhanded, which is incredibly difficult and a last resort, then they now own the invention and you're no longer able to pursue it.
Wow, I did not know that. That is good information. I'm sure somebody else doesn't know that as well, that you have to be the first to file it. So that is good to know. And that's why it's good to be in contact with guys like Mr. Devin Miller here. So that is good information. All right, so I have another question. So in regards to, so you have like a lot of, say like e-commerce sites, right, that are out there, and they have all these, maybe it's a clothing brand. They have these designs and things like this on their website. So I don't know, but they could have multiple. I mean, they could have tens, maybe even hundreds of different designs. How would a person, I guess, in regards to what you do, like I wouldn't know. I guess that would be not a trademark, but maybe copyright because it's creative works. So how would they go about, I guess, protecting that?
Yeah, so there'd be a couple different avenues that you think about for protection. So one is for any specific design, or for all of your designs. So let's say you have 50 designs. Really cool clothing, looks awesome, it's catchy, people love to wear it, love the design. That would fall. Those designs in themselves would fall under copyright. So if you're wanting to protect the different designs, you go file a copyright. A lot of times you can file multiple designs within a given copyright, so you can reduce the cost and otherwise get the protection. So on the actual designs for the clothing in itself, falls under copyright. The other thing is you may consider is you may also have a brand that goes along with the clothing line. So whether it's Levi, whether it's Abercrombie and Fitch, and I'm not a brand guy or a clothing guy as much, so I don't know all the brands, but whatever brand that might be, but you're going to have that clothing line or has a brand and a value in that brand, just like a Levi's would. And so you're going to want to also file a trademark to protect the brand of the clothing line. So that's where you just kind of split. Hey, maybe I really have a great name for the clothing line, great quality. I want to protect that brand. And I also have really cool designs that are unique and different out there and people love. Then you do it both with copyrights and trademark.
Okay. Wow. Cool. That is good to know. And like I said, I know there's a lot of people that will have questions in regards to that. And so that is very helpful. All right. So I'm going to kind of dive into now some business questions because I know you also help businesses with different things when it comes to small business entrepreneurship and things like that. And then also after these questions, I want to maybe also kind of get more information as far as like how you help businesses. So my first question in regards to I guess business or entrepreneurship, this is kind of in the mindset of a beginning entrepreneur, right? So what advice can you provide? Maybe somebody that's considering, they're saying, hey, I want to, I'm thinking of becoming an entrepreneur. I want to start this business. What maybe is I know this is a broad question, but maybe you can narrow it doin to something. But what's some good advice you could give somebody that's, they're saying, hey, I think I want to start a business or become an entrepreneur. What's one of the first things you try to tell somebody if they come to you with that question?
Yeah, and I always try to approach it kind of from both. You have kind of both the legal perspective, which you offer, and then also the business perspective. And while they have some overlap, they're also a bit different. In addition to my law firm, which or continue to actively do, I've also done and started several startups and small businesses. And those are everything from a small family business all the way up to 7 and 8 figure businesses that I'm still involved with. And so, have kind of, I love, or I think that it's fun to share or look at it both from both perspectives, because you can learn both on, hey, just, how do you do this legally, but also what are you looking at on the business side. And I think, the thing that's probably on both fronts, one of the things when you're starting out with almost at the idea stage is, if you're an entrepreneur minded or you're geared towards that way, or you always have those, a lot of times, like you call them, idea guys, where you have a whole bunch of ideas. One of the problems you get into is you're always coming up with an idea, and every time you have the idea, you think it's the greatest idea in the world. It's going to make you billions of dollars. You're going to be the next unicorn, and then it never works out. And so because you're always having that idea, and you're jumping from one idea to the next, and it's hard to filter and decide which idea is actually a good idea versus which ones are the terrible ideas. And so I think one of the things to do is to slow down that process just a bit, to, when you have the idea, put a bit more time into it. So one of the things I've always done, and I always recommend, and at least works well for me, is if you have an idea that you're excited about, you think it's a good idea that you'd like to pursue, write it down on a sticky note. Easy sticky note, write the idea down. I put it on my desk. I wait for a week. So I just let it sit there for a week. And then I come back and look at it and say, hey, am I still as excited about this idea as I was a week ago? Is it still as good of an opportunity? Does it still make sense to pursue after? 95% of the time I look at that idea and I think, well, that was a stupid idea, and I crumple it up and throw it in the garbage. But the ones that make it through, and if I'm still as excited about it a week later as I was when I had it, then at least it passes that initial layer of, hey, it's worthwhile to pursue because I still maintain that level of passion. And then once, if it kind of passes that initial thing, then I think the next step is do a little bit of research, see what's already out there. It's amazing to me how a lot of times I'll have clients come in the office and they'll say, hey, I've got this great idea. It's go earth shattering and groundbreaking, and nobody else has ever thought of it. And then they'll start to explain it to me. And so I'll be like, well, I'm pretty sure I've seen something like that. It seems like I've already seen something like that out there. And we'll spend 5 minutes and say, why don't we just pull up Google and just look at it really quick, see what comes up. We'll spend 5 minutes and say, now, is this what you're thinking of? Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. And they've never actually, they have the idea and they're so excited to get started on it. They never do any of the research to see what else is out there. Is a product already out there? Is there already a lot of businesses? Is it a competitive marketplace? Is it so inexpensive or so expensive to do that it doesn't make sense? Or is it a great opportunity? But do some of that initial research. So if I were to say if I were to get started on a business, one is I slow down the process, make sure you're still excited about the idea a week from now as you are today, and then two, do a bit of that research and see who else is out there. There's always a competitor. People will often come into my office and they'll say, there's nobody else like this out there. There's nobody. And I say, well, how are people solving this problem right now? And they're like, well, there's other product out there, but it's not as good as mine. I say, so you do have a competitor. It's just that you may be different or better, And let's say you take the example. You were the first person to come up with the automobile, the vehicle. And you say, nothing else is out there. I've got the first gasoline powered automobile. Well, before the automobile, there was a horse and carriage. Before the horse and carriage, there was the bicycle. Before the bicycle, there was horses. Before horses, there was walking. There's always something that's a predecessor people use to solve a given problem, get from point A to point B. Now, yours may be better. It may be much more efficient, maybe less expensive. It may provide a lot better features. But you always want to understand what else is out there and where is your value. What are you going to do differently? And I think if you can start to nail those things, then when you get into the discussion of, what should I do with the patent? What should I do with the trademark? How should I build a business? You already have a lot of that foundational work that a lot of times people tend to want to jump over and just get started on it, and they never actually understand the landscape. And then it tends to hamper the ability for your business to be successful.
Nice. I like that. Really got to do some homework as an entrepreneur. I mean, there's a lot of like you said, layers. You got the idea phase, but there's more to it other than that. So that is good information. All right. So for maybe an established entrepreneur, somebody that's they've started their business and they're going, but they're looking for maybe some ways to grow their business. So what are maybe some strategies or some techniques that this entrepreneur maybe needs to try to implement to help his business grow?
Yeah, and I think every business is different. There are certainly some, I think, principles that are the same. And one of the things I think, if you're earlier on, so a lot of times you'll get the business, okay, you go through the process I just described, you get the business up and going, you start to get some sales, you start to have a bit of success. And then the next question is how do I grow this? Or how do I expand, or how do I scale it? And a lot of times, one of the difficulties early on that you're going to hit on is that it's oftentimes hard, is you're hesitant to bring on somebody else, or people beyond maybe you and a founder or a couple founders, because one, you're saying I I don't want to. They can't do it as well as I can. In other words, you bring on an employee and say, well, I'm going to have to train them, I'm going to have to teach them, and then they're still not going to do it as well as I can. It's going to take them longer, and all those can be true. Sometimes, a lot of times they're not, but that's not honest, or a lot of times a fear. And so you tend to hamper the growth of your business because you're never willing to bring people on out of the fear that they're not going to be as efficient, they're not going to do it as well as you. And I think that one is one that you have to overcome and figure out, bring people on and be able to delegate them. And I always kind of have the rule of, I think most entrepreneurs, and I absolutely put myself in the same bucket, are such that they always think they can do it the best. They're smarter than everybody else and they can do it better than everybody else. And if you didn't have that philosophy, you probably wouldn't be an entrepreneur, because if somebody else was doing it better and they were smarter than you, there's no reason to get into business. And yet, if you have that philosophy, you're trying to always do everything yourself, or with yourself or a founder or co-founder, then you're never going to be able to grow. And so I always look at it as, if you're getting to the point that you could bring someone on, they can do the job even 80% as well as you. So it may not be quite as well as you, they may not be quite as efficient, but they can do it 80% as well. You should really look to hand that off or bring someone else on to take over that responsibility, because what you're really looking to do is finding the areas that people aren't able to do as well as you, and whether that's sales, whether that's product development, whether that's marketing, whether that's innovation, or whatever your value is, and wherever you're going to be able to drive the most value. That's where you're going to start to look at, as far as how you can bring on those people, so that allows you to devote the time to the things that you add the most value to the business, and allow others to handle the other things that aren't. One of the other things that I'm a big proponent of is on automation. Now, automation gets a horrible name, and I think some of it is well deserved and some of it's not, in the sense that most of the time people think, oh, you're doing automation with the business, so this means when I call up a business, I'm going to get the recorded message. It's going to tell me to punch all these different numbers. I'm going to punch all these numbers. I'm going to get directed to the wrong person. They're going to tell me they can't help me. They're going to transfer me to somebody else. I'm going to get hung up on, and I'm going to start all over. And that's kind of people's build to automation. Or the alternative is, I'm going to go to a website, I'm going to click on the little chat button. It's going to be a robot that just keeps telling me, here's an article that you should read, never answers my question, and is a horrible experience. Not talking about any of that. What I'm talking about is, if you can find areas that you're doing something redundant, meaning over and over. So, give me an example. I'm in intellectual property, run a law firm. We have a lot of the same emails that give people notifications of what's going on with their matters. What's the next step? How do they keep going? What is required, and those type of things. Well, it's a lot of redundant. We give a lot of the same updates, use a lot of similar emails, and if what we've done is you can automate a lot of that, such that it makes sure that the client gets the information, they're well taken care of. But it also frees up your time to do the things that, hey, maybe now that I don't have to respond to all these emails and it's already automated, I can spend more time one-on-one with clients, and I can help them out, or I can spend more time on selling the product, or doing product development, or whatever that might be. So I think a couple things is, one is to learn how to delegate, and whether that's an individual and bringing them on, or learning how to automate some of the things that you're doing, such that you're not having to do those repetitive processes.
Awesome. Delegate and automate. I like that. I guess what you're saying is it's okay to get some help. I think that's probably something that a lot of us need to, as business owners, entrepreneurs, we need to try to do, is make sure we get some help, because it can be overwhelming. And I know that. And actually, one of the last interviews I had, that's what the lady suggested. She's a CEO of a business, and she stated that hire somebody before you think you can. Sometimes we think, I can't do that. I don't know if I have it, but it like you said, it'll free up your time for you to do other things. So that's good. I like that, though. Delegate and automate. That is wonderful. Great statement there. All right. So I heard you say that you have started, of course, you're an attorney. You also have started, I think you said 5 or 6 figure business, right? Is that what you said? So This question in regards to you yourself, are there any, I know it was a work in progress, but are there any failures that you experienced that, you can say, man, had I not gone through that, I probably wouldn't have learned this. So are there any experiences that you had like that where you maybe had some setbacks or failures or anything like that that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if it's a setback, failure, thing I wish would or could change or whatever it is, but hopefully it qualifies. But so one of the businesses that I got going was it started when I was doing. So I did a couple degrees, and when I was doing graduate school, I did my law degree as well as an MBA degree at the same time. And one of the businesses I started was while I was earning those degrees. So it started out as a business competition, bought out the other people that were on the team, kept the business going, and has continued to grow it. And it was gaining traction. It was starting to get successful, and we've done some initial fundraising. We've had some investments. We're looking to take it to the next level and start to put it out in the marketplace. And about that time, you had somebody that came along that filed a frivolous lawsuit. Now you're saying, okay, well, you're an attorney, no big deal. It's still a big deal, and it's still, even if it's a frivolous lawsuit and you're in the right, it still takes a lot of time, money, and effort away from your focus of your business to deal with that. And so it was about over the course of a year, we had, somebody that was threatened with the lawsuit. We went back and forth. It drained a lot of the energy, decreased a lot of the momentum. And it was one of those things where it was not a fun thing to go through. And now getting out to the other side, the interesting thing is at the end of that, at the end of about a year, going through back and forth and arguing with other attorneys, going against the other side and negotiating and navigating and otherwise. At the end of all that, we ended up buying the other business that was filed a frivolous lawsuit for pennies on the dollar, folded in with what we were doing, and it actually increased our valuation quite a bit. So it ended up working out well. And so on that sense, I don't know that I would go back and change it, or I would otherwise say it wasn't a good overall experience. But for about a year, there was just, it was miserable just going through and having to deal with other attorneys. And I don't like dealing with attorneys any more than anybody else does when you're getting threatened with lawsuits. And so kind of going through all of that, it was one of those experiences where it was just miserable. It was just a year of slog that I wouldn't want to go through that experience again. It worked out well, and we ended up making kind of lemonade out of lemons. But at the time, that was one of the things that was definitely something that was an experience where it was one that was a difficult experience, but it was part that you learned a lot of how you go towards protecting the business, how sometimes it's just going to be hard. You have to have the determination, the grit to get through it. And yet, if you're looking for those opportunities, you can make sometimes good opportunities out of bad ones if you're willing to persevere.
I like that. Yes, perseverance is definitely needed. I think I like to ask that question to just about everybody that I interview, because I know we all have had our experiences of failure. But I think what people have to understand is that it's common, and it's one of those things that it's kind of it's common in life. We win some, we lose some. But I guess in your case, it was a drag, but you overcame it. So good for you guys, and thanks for sharing that. All right, so Mr. Devin, do you like surprises?
If it's a good surprise.
All right.
It depends on what kind of surprise it is, but as long as it's a good surprise, I'm all for it.
Yes, all right. You're a man of many hats, but I got some surprise questions for you. They're very easy to answer, but they are surprise questions. All right. So, which would you prefer for breakfast? Bacon and waffles or bacon and pancakes?
I'm a waffle guy, so bacon is always delicious no matter what it's with. But I'd go with bacon and waffles because pancakes are good, but the waffles are just a lot better.
All right. Yep. I love waffles as well. Yeah, I agree. Bacon, man, bacon can go good with anything. So I'm with you on that. All right. Next surprise question. Would you rather have bone-in or boneless wings?
Oh, it's just whenever they remove the bone from wings, it's just never the same. It doesn't, whatever. I don't know what causes it, but it just doesn't have the same taste, or maybe it's a gratification of biting it off. So I would have to go with bone-in wings just because, every time I've had a boneless wing, it just never is the same experience. It never quite has the same taste.
All right. Can't complain with you on that one. All right. Next surprise question. Which makes the better pets? Dogs or cats?
Oh, this is hands down because we have both at my house. So we actually have one dog, 2 cats, and a bunny. So I get to experience all three. And dogs are hands down. My problem with cats, and I'm not meaning to offend anybody that's a cat person, is cats are very self-centered and are only worried about themselves, whereas dogs are very selfless and love to be with you and to just be happy. And so for me, I'd much rather play with a dog and have a dog around because now I get to actually interact, whereas half the time with our cats, they're usually they don't pay attention to you, want to do their own thing. If you want to pet them, they might let you do it for a little bit, and then they want to go back to doing their own thing. So, but hands down, I'm a dog person.
Yes, we've had cats, so yes, cats are they're in their own little world. They do their own thing. But all right, good. All right, last surprise question: Team iPhone or Team Samsung?
All right, so I got my phone here, so I'll just hold up. I'm on Team Samsung. My wife is on Team Apple, so my problem is Apple is really great as long as you like it exactly how they have it set up and you want it out of the box. You don't want to customize or do anything else, and that's what my wife loves. And yeah, for me, I'm like, I like the widgets. I like to be able to customize it. I like to have the freedom that Apple doesn't offer. So I'm team or Android or I have a Samsung Galaxy. My wife is iPhone all the way. And we both just say, you can do whatever you want with your phone. Just don't touch my phone.
Oh, yes. There we go. Hey, Mr. Devin says Team Samsung. So all you iPhone heads, there you go. So if you have a problem, you have to talk to Mr. Devin. Yes, I'm a Samsung man myself, and I'm the only one actually in our house that has a Samsung. Everybody else has iPhone, so I'm gonna hold it down.
All of my wife's family and all of my family, they all have iPhones, and so I always get all the crap because my phone never works well with the iMessages and everything else. It always messes up their text chain. I'm like, well, you guys can all just come over to Android and it would solve the problem, but I haven't been able to convince them.
Exactly, I'm right there with you. All right. Thanks for answering those surprise questions. So now I'm going to talk about, I guess, your law firm. So you can tell us more about your law firm, how you help businesses. Also, you have a podcast as well. So I guess you can, start with your law firm and then you can talk about the podcast that you have as well.
Yeah. So on the law firm, just a quick background. So I've been an attorney for about 10 years now. As I mentioned, I kind of have two passions. One is I love startups and small businesses. I've done several myself, continue to do them, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. And then I also have the law side of things. I love the side of legal practice, be able to do those things, be able to help their startups and small businesses protect and grow their business. So I did legal practice. I worked for other firms for about 7 years before I started my own firm. And I worked for big clients. So I worked for, Amazon and Intel and Ford and Red Hat and others. And was, fun to be able to name drop and to do that thing. And yet on the other hand, I found that I love startups and small businesses. That was my passion. Those are the clients I like to work with. Those are the businesses I wanted to do with. And so as I was doing that, that's when about 3 years ago, I started Miller IP Law. So with the idea that what I was really going to do is focus on the clients that I wanted to work with. Go figure. So with that, started Miller IP Law that we focus on helping startups and small businesses. We primarily focus on intellectual property, so patents, trademarks, copyright, and then we also do a lot of business-related things. So LLCs, NDAs, independent contractor agreement, those type of things to make sure really what you need to help to protect and grow your business is what we focus on. So that was kind of Miller IP Law. Been doing it for about 3 years and had an awesome time and a blast, and have myself and several other attorneys here now at the firm that work with me on doing that. And so it's a blast. So if anybody, and I'll nameless or shamelessly or drop if people ever want to reach out to me, if they ever have any about patents, they want to talk about trademarks, or they just want to pick my brain, easiest way to do that is to go to strategymeeting.com. So you go to strategymeeting.com, that goes right to my calendar, shows all my availability. You can set aside a Zoom meeting. You can set aside an in-office, or if you want to just do it via phone, but it's an easy way to grab some time with me. And so that's a lot about the law firm, and it's a blast, and I love doing it, and it's been great to work with a lot of startups and small businesses. And then you mentioned the podcast, which was kind of grew out of doing the law firm in and of itself. And so one of the things that, I think I've worked with now a few hundred startups and small businesses. And while every startup and small business is different, every journey is different, there are always some commonalities that I was always hearing. And, some of those commonalities were, I'm having to wear a lot of hats, and, it's a lonely journey, and nobody else gets what it's like to do hiring and firing, marketing and sales, website development, you're doing you're the janitor, you're the boss, and you're everything in between. There's always kind of that lonely journey because unless you're talking with somebody else that's also been through it, nobody quite gets what it's like to run your own business. And so one of the things that started the podcast, which is the Inventive Journey, was really talking about the journeys that people get that are typically we have founders, co-founders, owners of startups and small businesses on, but it's really telling the journey of how they got to where they're at today. And we take it back usually to the high school, college time frame and work all the way forward, because usually what people want to do is they just want to jump over all the hard things and all the journey that it took together. And let's just talk about the successful business I have now and look at how much money we're making. And I'm not saying that's not important, but you always miss over, and it kind of gives people that false sense of, oh, everybody's an overnight success. I have an idea, I put it up online, I put a website, and a week later I'm a millionaire type of a thing, because that's what we see in the movies and in the books and on television shows. But in reality, there's always a lot more of the journey. And so the Inventive Journey podcast really kind of goes through, and we've now had, I think, over 400 startups and small businesses on the podcast. And it goes through that journey of everybody, how they took what they did, or how they got to where they're at today. And it's everything from, hey, I dropped out of high school, I never finished, and I started my own business, been doing it ever since, to, hey, I went to college, got all these degrees, worked for big business, decided I hated it, to started out as a side hustle, never thought it was going to turn into anything, and now it's a full-time business. And so it's kind of fun to hear everybody's journeys, how they get there, where they're at today, what was that journey, what were all the pivots and the adjusts, and it really just makes for a fun time to be able to have those conversations.
Nice, man. I love that, and I love the idea with your podcast. I think you said it's the Inventive Journey, right? Is that the name of it? How you want to go all the way back to people's high school years, which is good because people need to know that people, hey, maybe they dropped out, or they weren't as successful. And I remember taking a course in college where they had us go all the way back. It's like they had us go all the way back and build this resume from when we got out of high school. And it was amazing how I look back at all of the information that I learned and things different. I think people don't even realize that they have so many skills that they picked up over the years. And it's good that your podcast points that out. But I thought that was good that, you go all the way back to people's high school. I love that. That's great. The Inventive Journey is this podcast. And I think you said that, how do you connect? Because that was going to be my next question. How can our listeners connect to you? You said strategy. What was that again?
Yeah. So if, for the Inventive Journey, if you go to any of the major podcast platforms, so, Stitcher, iHeart, you go to our Apple iTunes store, you go to, Google store, any of those, it's all on those platforms. So just go search the Inventive Journey. We're also on YouTube. So you can check us out on YouTube and you can see the video version of it. And that's the easy way to find the podcast. If you're looking to connect up, I'll give your listeners a couple ways to connect up with me. So as I mentioned, one is if they want to do a one-on-one meeting. Now this is therefore related to your business and the legal and intellectual property, but we do free strategy meetings. So one of the things that when I set up the law firm that I wanted to offer was I wanted to be able to give people an opportunity to come ask their questions, overcome that fear of, hey, before I go pay an attorney all this money to go do some work that I don't even know if I need, I'd like to get a few questions answered. So we said, well, why don't we just offer some free strategy meetings that people can come in, they can chat with us. So strategymeeting.com links right to my calendar. If they want to go check out the website, they want to find out more information, find out about our fees, we have a ton of informational material. You can also see our podcast on there. We also have some programs launching that provide a ton of resources, which is a fun program that's called Become a Unicorn. And all of those things are really, and we also have DIY legal products. So we have a ton of resources that we try and offer for startups and small businesses. So our general law firm webpage, just go to Law with Miller, all one word, lawwithmiller.com, and you can find out about us there. The last one is I'm not huge on a lot of social media. I don't spend tons of time, but I do love LinkedIn, and I'm on there fairly regularly. So if people want to check me out on LinkedIn, see my profile, message me. Otherwise, check out the content. They can go to meetmiller.com, and that'll take them right to my LinkedIn profile. So strategymeeting.com if they want to talk with me one-on-one, lawwithmiller.com to check out the website, meetmiller.com if they want to hit me on LinkedIn, and then definitely check out the podcast.
Wow, awesome. A man of many hats. Man, this guy has several degrees. He has startups. He's an attorney. Has a podcast. I don't know how you do it all, Mr. Devin, but
and I'm married with 4 kids that are all
married 4 kids. Yes.
And 2 cats, a dog, and a bunny. So
and a bunny. 2 cats, a dog, and a bunny. Married with 4 kids. Hey, I'm right there with you. Married with 4 kids. I don't have any pets, but I'm right there with you. But man, this has been a blast. I certainly appreciate your time with all this, and we're going to put all that information when we publish this episode. We'll put all that information that you provided in the show notes. But this has been a blast and a pleasure. I have definitely enjoyed. I've learned some stuff, and definitely, people, if you need an intellectual property attorney, reach out to Mr. Devin Miller. And you're located. Where are you at? Where are you located at?
So we're located headquartered in Utah, just north of Salt Lake City. Nice thing is where it's on our intellectual property is all on the federal level. So we actually have more clients outside of Utah than inside of Utah by a pretty good margin. So we have clients everywhere from California to New York, Alaska to Hawaii, and everything in between. So it makes it really nice. We're set up to help anybody in the U.S. and across the country to make sure they're taken care of.
Awesome. Yes. So no matter where you're at, you can reach out to Mr. Devin Miller. Mr. Devin Miller, I appreciate your time. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Devin Miller. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yes. Another great episode. Great episode providing great information. Intellectual property. And I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. I certainly want to say I am thankful and thank Mr. Devin Miller for stopping by and providing such valuable information. And I hope you understand how important it is to protect your intellectual property. And I just want to give just a few notes or tips or go over a few things that was stated previously from Mr. Devin Miller. And of course, intellectual property, again, that involves protecting your inventions, your creative works, and trademarks. So if you invent something that's cool, like an iPhone, which I'm sure you're probably not going to invent an iPhone, but something similar, if you create any type of phone or you create any invention, you want to get a patent for it. Of course, your creative works, you want to get copyrights for them. And even your logos or symbols or things that you create for your business, you want to get a trademark. So those are things that you can do to protect your business and also prevent some trouble down the road from someone trying to steal your ideas. It is a competitive market, and people do steal ideas and can take your ideas that you have worked so hard for. So it only makes sense to protect your intellectual property. And like Mr. Devin Miller said, the first one to file those, even though you may have came up with the idea first, the first one to file it is more likely the one that's going to get recognized as the owner of that. So you want to go ahead and file those things speedily, so that you don't run into any trouble down the road. And I like the fact that Mr. Devin Miller, they provide free services. If you got questions or anything about that, they provide free services for you, in which you can talk to an attorney to find out, hey, do I need to file? What do I need to do? Or what's my next steps? What do I need to do? So I think that's great that they provide free advice for those who need that. And so, we need that type of information. I know for many of us, we're scared to talk to attorneys. We think it's going to cost us a bunch of money, but hey, he provides a free service for you to, just check to see if you need to file a copyright or a patent or a trademark. So I would say go and definitely check that out. And his information, of course, is Miller IP. That's his website, Miller IP Law. And so you can just look that up and go check it out. And like I said, he has a free service where you can find out if you need any of those types of services. He also has a podcast in which you can go and listen to other business owners and their journeys, their successes, their failures, which is called The Inventive Journey. And you can look that up on any of the podcast media outlets to find that. And so also we'll have this information in our show notes for this episode. So on our episodes or on our website as well, the links and all that information. So again, hope you enjoyed this episode. We appreciate you tuning in. Again, if you enjoyed this episode, please, if you could, go to iTunes, give us a great review. So that about does it for this episode. So I want to encourage you guys to continue to go out there and strive for success, because remember, if you don't do it, somebody else will. We'll see you on the next episode.